He has tattoos, and Lorraine can see it clearly from a distance. A string of black, like English letters, was hidden under the sleeves of the white school uniform. Wen's position is probably the shoulder blade, because when he plays, his sleeves are rolled up to show a little edge. Lorraine Yuan bit the straw and sat on the steps to watch the ball. He was afraid of the sun, hiding in the shadows, squinting lazily, staring at the people in the center of the court. The man happily clapped his hands with his teammates to celebrate a successful goal. Lorraine sucked the straw, and a mouthful of sweet pulp entered his mouth, which he grinned finely with his teeth. Luo Lin Yuan supported the stone platform, raised his face and loosened his neck. As soon as he took out his mobile phone, someone slapped him on the back of his neck, forcing him to almost spit out the juice he just drank. He pushed away the hand that was on him, and said to the person rudely, "What are you doing?" Fang Xiao took his cold face and didn't take it seriously. "Why are you sitting here to watch the game? Our class is on the next court." Lorraine ignored him far away, put the straw in his mouth, and bit slowly, keeping his eyes from the people on the court. Fang Xiao followed his line of sight and said, "Hey, isn't this Yu Han?" He squinted and stared at Yu Han, and then at Luo Lin Yuan. "What did he do to you?" Lorraine was far from paying attention, and Fang Xiao didn't care either. He and Lorraine have been together since junior high school, and he knows that this person is nothing but a face. In front of outsiders, it's fine, but in front of acquaintances, he has a dog-like temper and mixed health. But as the old saying goes, the more expensive the child, the harder it is to raise. Lorraine has suffered from serious and minor illnesses since his mother's birth. Because Luo Lin Yuan often spent his childhood in the hospital, his temperament is more arrogant. In such a growing environment, Lorraine has an almost dual personality. When Fang Xiao first met people, he was also confused by the way he pretended to be. At the time of junior high school, Lorraine was far from developed. It was really male and female, tender, dark, and big eyes, eyelashes like mixed blood, and a little Princess Luo nickname. Of course, girls secretly call him Prince Luo. At that time, Fang Xiao was just a simple-faced dog, licking his face to death. He didn't know how to be friends with Lorraine Yuan. In the beginning, the little Princess Luo was cute and pitiful, but later she showed her true colors. Fang Xiao didn't think that she would not be friends if she couldn't get along. But when Lorraine was far away in a group fight on campus, he ran away with Fang Xiao, who was half crippled. At that time, Fang Xiao really regarded people as brothers, and the dog temper was tolerated. Lorraine Yuan usually wears a pair of high mountain flowers on the outside, and the relationship between gentlemen is as light as water. It is rare to see him care so much about people, and he still comes out and stares at people to play ball on a hot day. Lorraine has never come to see him when he plays. Fang Xiao put his arm on Luo Lin Yuan again. "What's the matter? Yu Han robbed you of a woman?" Fang Xiao looked at Lorraine Yuan, who was staring at Yu Han, and thought very shamelessly, "This picture is like a fox staring at a Tibetan Mastiff, aggressively grinning for minutes and biting. People Tibetan Mastiffs are not willing to bird him." Fang Xiao followed the line of sight to Yu Han on the court. "If Lorraine Yuan is your son, then Yu Han is a prince in trouble. Single parent, my mother died young and was brought up by my grandmother. My grandmother was hit by a car a few years ago and is still in the hospital." Yu Han deliberately asked the teacher for leave and went to the hospital to accompany her at night. Even in this case, her grades remained stable in the top 10. He is handsome, has good grades, and has a poor background. He is just like a character set in a novel, which attracts many girls to pity him, help him secretly, and initiate crowdfunding. Yu Han also refused to come. The girl gave him food, and he ate it. The girl started crowdfunding to donate money to him, and he took it. Will return. In private, some people say that Yu Han looks audacious, but his knees are softer than anyone else's. You have to stubbornly kill yourself to keep your dignity. In short, both of them are quite famous people in the school, but Fang Xiao can't figure out how these two can get along. Fang Xiao pinched Lorraine Yuan's neck. You said that Yu Han is not talking about family difficulties, why do you still have the energy to play football? Lorraine slapped Fang Xiao's hand down, maybe he won the game and got rich. Fang Xiao hissed and stared at Lorraine Yuan in disbelief. It's strange enough that little Princess Luo is interested in the people next to her, and she even went to inquire about people's affairs. Did the sun rise from the west? Lorraine lowered his eyelids sullenly. It was really too sunburn, he couldn't stand it. He got up and jumped to the bottom in 3 or 2 steps, and because he got up too hard, he was dizzy, he really hated his body. Lorraine Yuan finally glanced at the people on the court, and inadvertently they met. Yu Han looked at him, and was stunned for a while, before subconsciously showing a gentle and polite smile. He just lifted his jersey to wipe the sweat off his face, and his cheeks were flushed with health. The girl watching him play had already taken out her phone to take a picture, taking pictures of the 8-pack ABS and the beautiful mermaid line. But Lorraine Yuan frowned in disgust. He thought, how dirty. It's so hot, so tired, so annoying, why on earth did he come to this place to watch football at noon, and it's not good to stay in the classroom and drink cold drinks. I can't drink ice at home, but when I come to school, Uncle Wu can't control him. He stepped on his snow-white sneakers and walked slowly towards the classroom. He threw the drink into the trash can with a thud. He didn't suddenly become interested in Yu Han, but he accidentally saw Yu Han kissing someone. The location is the rooftop of the school, and the object of his kiss is a man. Lorraine Yuan was hiding behind the shade and learning to smoke. He endured the itchiness in his respiratory tract, his face turned red, and he stared at the two friends not far away. Stacked silhouettes. Youth, school uniforms, hugs, kisses, just the same gender, it constitutes an unusual picture. All male, live gay. His body couldn't bear the cigarette at all. Lorraine Yuan pinched the cigarette on the wall, leaving a dark mark, ending this stupid adolescent rebellion. He couldn't help staring at Yu Han and kissing other people's lips, and slowly, they were reddened. Just like the red velvet cake he loves, it looks sweet and tempting. Lorraine didn't dare to think about why he was interested in a man's mouth, he felt so terrible, his whole body stood up. Lorraine Yuan returned to the class. A girl sat in his seat. The girl was lying on her stomach and playing with her mobile phone, her beautiful long legs were propped under the desk. The monitor who was sitting in front of Lorraine's far seat held a small mirror, as if he was sorting his hair, but he was actually peeking at the girl sitting behind him in the mirror. Lorraine walked over slowly, and shouted in a calm tone, Xiaofu. Xiaofu sat up from his seat and pouted, where did you go? I've been waiting for you for a long time. Fang Xiao came back behind him, and when he saw Xiaofu, he said, he went to watch the game next door. Luo Lin Yuan's eyes swept across Xiaofu's mouth with pale pink lipstick, stood next to the monitor, and pulled the mirror away from his hand. The monitor was shocked. Lorraine Yuan propped on the desk with one hand, his tone was flat, and the content was straightforward, I don't like people peeking at my girlfriend, don't do it again. The squad leader looked at him awkwardly and nodded. Lorraine missed, pushing the mirror to the ground and shattering. The squad leader got up and went to find a broom to clean all the mirror fragments on the floor. Xiaofu looked out, her heart was sweet, she got up, waited for Luo Lin Yuan to sit down, then sat on the lap, and wrapped her hands around Luo Lin Yuan's neck. Lorraine frowned instantly, go down. Xiaofu twisted her body and said coquettishly, no, I don't have a place to sit. Lorraine looked at Fang Xiao from a distance. Fang Xiao stood up immediately, come on, Sister Xia, I'll give you my place. Xiaofu glared at Fang Xiao, what's the matter with you? Fang Xiao. Well, he's nosy. Lorraine increased his tone, I'll go on. Shaft stood up, turned around and ran to the door, disappearing in an instant. Fang Xiao was amazed when he saw the face-changing skills of the woman. He put his head in front of Lorraine Yuan to see the expression. Little Princess Luo didn't look at a girlfriend who was angry with him at all, but took out her mobile phone and stared at the screen of the mobile phone without moving. Fang Xiao said, "You don't chase." Lorraine didn't look up from a distance, "Don't chase." Fang Xiao tut, "Aren't you afraid that people really run away?" Lorraine was far from answering him, lying on the desk again, playing with his mobile phone aimlessly, opening one app after another and exiting. He had everything in his head. For a while, I thought of Xiaofu's lips with lipstick, and then thought of Yu Han's mouth. The woman's lips were soft and fragrant, and he kissed it. What about Yu Han? Why would he kiss a man? What is there for a man to kiss? Maybe he will grow a beard early, and it will hurt when the chin is rubbed together. Luo Linyuan put the phone screen on the desktop, thinking that when Yu Han was playing ball just now, he even lifted his clothes to wipe the sweat. Lorraine Yuan, who is obsessed with cleanliness, can't understand this kind of behavior. Of course, he knows that most adolescent boys are so dirty. But when this kind of filth appeared on Yu Han, Luo Linyuan couldn't accept it. Although Yu Han didn't need him to accept it, the boy who was kissed by Yu Han might like the dirty smell. Lorraine clicked his tongue, turned his head and buried his face between his arms. He didn't want to think about it anymore, he felt stupid. When the school bell rang, Luo Linyuan's WeChat group became active, and messages came out one by one. They all played together. Fang Xiao was very happy with his phone. Not long after, he raised his hand and arched Lorraine with his elbow. Lao Li and the others said to go to the bar tonight. If you can't go, bring Xiaofu. Lorraine was far from being very interested. Fang Xiao added, "You have to coax your girlfriend. How can you fall in love like this? A girl with a cold personality, like a flower like jade friend, don't touch it." These words did not know that Luo Linyuan's nerve was stabbed. He sat up and glanced at Fang Xiao like a knife. But Fang Xiao was not afraid of him at all, and he made an assertion to return to the group. "Go, little Princess Luo will take his girlfriend there." Li Yujia, Xiaofu? The class flower of class 10? Suchang, asked Mrs. Xia to bring some girls from their class. Fang Xiao, come on. He just raised his head and was about to tell Lorraine Yuan, when he saw that the person who was still in the position just now had disappeared, and he didn't know where he went. Fang Xiao. Xiaofu took out her vanity mirror and just touched her face, when her roommate poked her with a smile, "Your boyfriend is here." Xiaofu's heart skipped a beat, and peeked at the door. Lorraine stood there looking into the classroom. Lorraine Yuan is slender, with skin that is whiter than a woman, delicate facial features, and cold eyes. She knew how popular Lorraine was in the grade, and she never thought that the two of them could really be together, but since they were together, she couldn't accept how Lorraine treated her like this. Now that Lorraine has come, she is not unhappy, but she still has to make a gesture on the bright side. She folded her hands and turned away, pretending not to look at him. When she saw the table-mate in front of her, she exclaimed in surprise, "Why did your boyfriend come to Renaiu? Do they know each other?" Xiaofu immediately turned around and widened her eyes, while Ren Yu also looked at Luo Linyuan who was walking in front of him, a little surprised. Luo Linyuan stood in front of the person's desk, picked up a Chinese book, opened the cover and read the two characters Renaiu written on the title page. Luo Linyuan stopped his eyes on the face for a while, until Ren Yu blushed and said embarrassedly, "This classmate, what's the matter with you?" Luo Linyuan put down the book, "Are you Ren Yu?" Ren Yu nodded inexplicably, "I am." Lorraine Yuan thoughtfully turned around and left the 10th class. I didn't expect to see another actor in the rooftop kiss scene on this trip. Yu Han and Ren Yu, these two names are incompatible, and they can be called a stupid combination. Wait, why did he come to class 10? It wasn't until his arm was grabbed that Lorraine turned his head and met Xiaofu, whose eyelids were red from the grievances, that he remembered that he came to class 10 to coax his girlfriend. Xiaofu bit her lip, trembling with anger, and was about to attack when Lorraine Yuan took out a lollipop from her pocket and handed it to her. She almost didn't hold back her face to laugh, but she still pretended to say, "I don't want your candy." Lorraine removed the candy wrapper and stuffed it directly into Xiaofu's mouth. Xiaofu laughed immediately and was coaxed. The two of them were talking at the door. After a while, Lorraine Yuan was patted on the shoulder, and someone whispered from behind, "Let me go." The voice had just passed the voice-changing period, and it was a little hoarse, but it was already a man's low, panting. Lorraine could even feel the vigorous heat radiating from the body behind him. He met a smiling face, that was Yu Han, who had just finished playing. Yu Han raised his hand to wipe the sweat dripping from his chin, and said a little embarrassedly, "Classmate, I want to go in." Luo Lin Yuan's thoughts disappeared immediately, but Xiaofu pulled her boyfriend away and smiled at Yu Han. Yu Han nodded and walked into the class. Xiaofu looked at Lorraine Yuan and wanted to speak, but what she saw was that her boyfriend's cold face turned red, his brows were wrinkled, and he looked a little unhappy. But what Lorraine was thinking was that, as expected of a man who likes men, he can speak so eloquently when he walks in. In the evening, a group of high school students met at a sugar water store outside the school. As soon as Fang Xiao saw Luo Linyuan's clothes, he shouted, "Ancestor, why are you still dressed like a student?" Lorraine wore a simple dress, white short sleeves, jeans, sneakers and a ball cap on his head, hiding his beautiful eyes in the dark. He glanced at Fang Xiao. Fang Xiao was dressed in exaggerated clothes. Fearing that people would think he was immature, he deliberately found a tight and V-shaped black short sleeve, with a thick necklace hanging around his neck, and his fingers also tingled. Ding dang dang, wears a lot and looks airy. Luo Lin Yuan stared at each other Xiao with indescribable eyes, until he was so annoyed by it that he ordered 2 bowls of sugar water with the owner of the Tang Shui shop loudly, 1 purple rice taro ball, 1 bowl red bean coconut milk. Fang Xiao muttered, "I want sweet potato syrup, why did you order it for me?" Lorraine is far from polite, "Order it yourself, this is what Xiaofu wants to drink." Fang Xiao gritted his teeth, patted Luo Linyuan's vest vigorously, jumped out of the chair before anyone got angry, ordered sugar water with the boss, and said to go out to buy cigarettes. Lorraine waved his hand without raising his head and continued to play mobile games. Not long after, someone sat next to him. He pushed the purple rice taro ball in front of him, halfway, and a soft body embraced his arm. "How do you know I'm here?" Luo Linyuan closed the game, put the phone back in his pocket, sent. Xiaofu wrinkled her nose, pinched a strand of her hair to the tip of her nose and smelled, "Is there? Is it fragrant?" Lorraine nodded honestly, "It's very fragrant. A little too fragrant and sweet." He spooned lipstick bean coconut milk. Girls like to eat sweet, and the taste is also sweet. Compared with a clean girl, Yu Han's body smell was messy. When he came out of the classroom this afternoon, he not only smelled sweat, but also a very strong smell that he couldn't tell. Xiaofu put a spoonful of coconut milk to his mouth. Lorraine shook his head, he didn't use the cutlery that others had used. Xiaofu didn't insist either. She knew that her boyfriend had a cleanliness addiction. Although she really wanted to be that exception, she knew how to behave. Not long after, Li Yuzha and Su Chong also came. These two, one rock style and one bad fan, tried to dress themselves in the direction of the old. When the two of them saw Luo Linyuan, Li Yuzha's reaction was similar to Fang Xiao's, but Su Chong said, "Miscalculation. I knew I was dressed like this." Fang Xiao ran back with a plastic bag and distributed coke to everyone. Li Yuzha pushed the cola away in disgust. "People who are going to drink, why drink cola?" The tone was quite rebellious, as if he could go to the bar and blow 10 bottles of foreign wine in minutes. A group of 5 people hit 2 cars. The driver drove to the bar street with familiarity, and specially told them that in the innermost street, anyone with a blue note at the door should not enter. Fang Xiao asked, "Why, master?" The master glanced at the 3 of them through the rear-view mirror. "Let's still be students." Fang Xiao panicked and was speechless. The master continued, "Once I took a guest there, my dear, the bar was full of two men hugging each other and making out. I saw the little brother in the middle with a woman friends. Isn't this afraid that you are going to the wrong place, so let me tell you something along the way. Fang Xiao heaved a sigh of relief. Xiaofu kept holding Lorraine Yuan's hand, but her boyfriend's mind had long gone. When I got out of the car, Lorraine kept thinking about it. A bar full of men? I feel that Yuhan is quite suitable to go, but good students will definitely not come to such a place. As soon as this thought came to him, he saw a familiar profile flash across the street. It was Yuhan. Yuhan was wearing a hat like him, a simple short-sleeved denim, and his footsteps were fast, and he disappeared in an instant. Lorraine Yuan subconsciously wanted to go there, but he was caught by Xiaofu. This delay will make it impossible to find anyone. Lorraine Yuan pursed her lips, her heart beating a little faster. Why did Yuhan come to this kind of place, shouldn't it? Maybe it's not enough to find a man at school, let's go to the bar to find it. This man. How can this person be so dissatisfied? Lorraine couldn't hold back, so he followed the others. The 5 high school students successfully sneaked into the bar. Fang Xiao secretly laughed, pretending to be a frequent visitor, and took out Alipay to lead them the little brother who went and bought wine. No foreign wine, all beer. Halfway through the drink, Fang Xiao and Li Yujia had already started boxing. Suchain was not drinking well, and a few glasses of wine were already on the ground. Lorraine Yuan didn't drink much, he thought the cups in the bar were dirty and the air stinks. Xiaofu felt bored and wanted to leave. And she felt keenly that since the group of them came in, many women were peeking at her Lorraine Yuan, and she died of jealousy. She took Lorraine Yuan's hand and shook it. Let's go, okay? I have to go home at 11 o'clock at night, or my parents will scold me. Luolin Yuan got up and said to Fang Xiao, who was already excited, I'll take Xiaofu home. Fang Xiao nodded indifferently and continued to punch Li Yujia excitedly. Lorraine went back to the bar after taking a taxi to take Xiaofu home. But this time, instead of going to the one where Fang Xiao and the others were, he walked to the end of the street to find the Blue Note bar. The bar is not hidden and easy to find. Lorraine stood at the door and frowned in embarrassment, not knowing whether to go in or not. But Yuhan dared to come. What did he dare not? He just wanted to go in and find Yuhan. Maybe he could see quite a wonderful expression on people's faces. It seems that Yuhan is not only a homosexual, but also a liar. Although the plan is very good, the moment Lorraine Yuan pushed the door in, even a person as slow as him could feel the sight from all directions. Those eyes were extremely direct and explicit, they looked at him from top to bottom, and several people smiled at him, their eyes extremely animalistic. Lorraine is far from anything else, and has a lot of courage. He didn't look at anyone, raised his chin slightly, glanced around the bar in disgust, but didn't find Yuhan. When he didn't even know it, he was slightly relieved. But just like a face slap, Yuhan appeared in the next second. He was not in the crowd, but at the bar. He turned the shaker in his hand, his movements were flexible, his expression was cold, and he didn't know if it was the effect of the bar light. He looked much more mature than in school. Luolin Yuan stared at Yuhan and clicked his tongue. At school, he was still a little more restrained. When he got to the bar, Yuhan was like a peacock with a screen. The peacock Yuhan threw the shaker high up, made a beautiful finishing move, unscrewed the jug, and prepared to pour it into the glass. At this moment, he just heard his guest say, "There's a new guy here, it looks good." Yuhan followed the sight of the guest, and he stopped. Lorraine was far from escaping, and directly met Yuhan's eyes. He walked over with a pocket and sat down on the high stool. He felt someone leaning over. "Little brother, this is your first time? Brother invites you to a bar." Luolin ignored the man and still stared at Yuhan. He raised his lips, "This classmate, invite me for a drink." Luolin Yuan's smile was full of schadenfreude and complacency, he wanted to see how flustered Yuhan would be. However, Yuhan is still calm, without the slightest panic. Please show your ID card. Luo Linyuan was caught off guard. He stared in astonishment, unable to believe that Yuhan, who was also a high school student, wanted to demolish his stage like this. Isn't he underage like himself? The person who chatted with Lorraine Yuan but was ignored laughed, "Little brother, you can't drink if you are underage." Lorraine looked at the man coldly. In fact, the man was not ugly, a middle-aged man with glasses, like a gentle office worker. The office worker did not get angry when he received Luo Linyuan's cold eyes, but looked at Luo Linyuan with eager eyes, and leaned over, making a sniffing gesture. "Ah, that's it, the taste of youth." Luo Linyuan was covered in goosebumps instantly. He originally came in to find trouble with Yuhan, but he was the first to be troubled. But they have already come here, how can they escape? He tried hard to calm himself, but the office worker directly raised his hand and took off his hat. "In the evening, what hat do you wear?" Lorraine Yuan's eyes were rounded, his hair was unkempt and his hat was lifted, and then slowly fell to his forehead. The best thing about him is a pair of eyes, and now they are fully exposed, reflecting the colorful light of the bar, which is beautiful and amazing. The office worker's eyes were amazed, and he couldn't help but move his body closer. As soon as he moved, someone pressed his shoulder, and the bartender who had been out of the way pressed his hand on his shoulder. Yuhan looked at the office worker. "He is underage, I suggest you find someone else." The office worker felt the strength on his shoulders, knew that Yuhan was not easy to mess with, and noticed Yuhan's face. He turned and touched Yuhan's hand. "Actually, I like you more this one." As soon as he finished speaking, the hand on his shoulder loosened, not Yuhan himself, but Luo Linyuan raised his hand and pushed it. Lorraine took back his hat in disgust and put it back on. "Come join in the fun." Luo Linyuan clenched his fists tightly and wanted to raise his hand to beat someone, but Yuhan asked him out loud, "What do you want to drink?" Luo Linyuan was stunned for a moment, and became even more angry. Still in the mood to ask him what he wants to drink and what kind of bar is this, so many people are sexually harassing? Why does Yuhan still work here? Don't burn your hands with this money. Lorraine said, "How much money are you here for a month?" Yuhan wiped the wine glass, and when he saw that he didn't want to order drinks, he turned around and approached the wine cabinet and continued to mix drinks, without paying any attention to him. The office worker left the bar after drinking with interest, leaving Lorraine Yuan by the bar. In fact, the environment of this bar is not too noisy, everyone is drinking and chatting quietly, much cleaner than the one Fang Xiao stayed in just now. At this time, someone like a manager came over. "Xiaoyu." Yuhan put down his wine. "What's wrong?" The manager said, "Someone in the band can't come, you go up and take your place." Yuhan nodded, bit his glove and pulled it off, moving neatly, with a different kind of handsomeness. But Lorraine was very uncomfortable with it. He thought it was very unhygienic. How many things must have been touched by this glove, especially the shoulder of the office worker just now. "I don't know if I touched it." "Does the mouth count as indirect kissing?" Yuhan washed a cup before leaving, poured a glass of milk and pushed it to him. "Let's go after drinking." Lorraine stared at the glass of milk from a distance, and was almost laughed at. Who is this humiliation? Yuhan quickly ran down the stage and turned on the stage. His bartender was dressed in a black shirt with the hem tucked into his trousers, which was held tightly by his broad shoulders, and he could even vaguely see the muscle lines on his back. He sat in front of an electronic keyboard, interlaced his fingers, loosened his bones, and finally gently placed his fingers on the keys. The prelude is the sound of the piano. When the music first came out, Lorraine seemed to understand a little bit why the school called him the Prince of Trouble. At that moment it seemed that all the light was his, at least Lorraine was far from taking his eyes off him. The silhouette was gentle and calm, and the fingers lightly played nice music. The song is good, and the face is beautiful, the eyelashes are even long enough to draw a long shadow on the cheek. Lorraine watched from a distance for a long time and wondered, when Ren Yu and Yu Han kissed, was it itchy on his face, would he be scratched by his eyelashes? He unconsciously drank the milk in the wine glass. The milk was warm, boiled sweetly, and tasted better than wine, and he also drank a lot without realizing it. After drinking half a glass, Luo Linyuan came back to his senses, and he actually used the public wine glass outside. Lorraine Yuan's scalp was numb for a while. He wiped his mouth with a tissue, got up and left. He wanted to buy a bottle of mineral water to rinse his mouth. Out of the bar, Ye Feng woke up his drowsy mind and remembered his purpose after entering the bar. He originally wanted to come to Yu Han, but he found it, but Yu Han didn't panic at all. Seeing him is like seeing a stranger. As soon as this thought flashed, Luo Linyuan was stunned for a moment, and realized that Yu Han and him were indeed just unfamiliar classmates. He just noticed this person unilaterally. Although he has seen Yu Han's most private appearance, he kisses others. I also know the secret that Yu Han does not want others to know. He works in a bar. But in fact, Yu Han is not familiar with him at all. Princess Luo finally realized the problem, that there is no relationship between him and Yu Han at all. Then what's the point of him coming to trouble this person so hard now? Yu Han doesn't take him seriously at all. This is not good. How can you not take him seriously? After Luo Linyuan rinsed his mouth, he returned to the bar and sat down until 12:30, when Yu Han finished his shift. He got up and stopped people. Where are you going? Yu Han ignored him. Luo Linyuan gritted his teeth. Does Ren Yu know you are here? He successfully stopped Yu Han. Yu Han slowly turned his head, and made a gesture of keeping up. Lorraine jumped off the bar stool and followed him out of the bar. There is an alley behind the bar, there are piles, mice are infested, and there is even a smell of urine. Lorraine Yuan's nose was wrinkled when his collar was mentioned and tossed again and again. His entire back and head hit the hard wall, and Lorraine screamed, "Ah!" Yu Han was stunned by his shouting, and relaxed a little. Does it hurt so much? Lorraine Yuan's tears are about to come out. Dirty! Dirty! Lorraine Yuan's eyes were probably wet because of the wetness. Yu Han loosened his grip and asked politely, "What's the matter with Guan Renyu?" But at this moment, Lorraine was not in the mood to answer his question at all. He only felt that his entire back was numb. Will his back rot? Thinking about it this way, Luo Linyuan's eyelids turned even redder, and his whole body trembled even more, and he didn't dare to move, for fear that if he moved, the dirt would touch a larger area. Yu Han said, "You'd better not talk nonsense, Ren Yu has nothing to do with these things." Luo Linyuan glared at Yu Han, grinding his teeth. "Really, the two of you really have nothing to do with each other." These words made Yu Han look unnatural. He stared at Luo Linyuan with scrutiny. "What are you trying to say?" Lorraine Yuan's breathing became heavier and heavier. "Give me the clothes." Yu Han, what? Lorraine Yuan, take off your clothes to me. He was about to collapse. Yu Han subconsciously took a few steps back. I'm not very fond of you. Lorraine Yuan, don't talk nonsense. My back is so dirty. Change my clothes quickly, or I won't say anything. Lorraine Yuan was so dirty that he was confused and didn't have the energy to appreciate Yu Han's body. He now has the heart to kill Yu Han. Yu Han took off his shirt and handed it to him, but Luo Linyuan raised his hands and ordered like a crippled, "Help me take it off, I don't want to touch this shirt." Yu Han stared at him, Luo Linyuan stared back unceremoniously. The two sides were deadlocked for only 30 seconds, Yu Han sighed and fell down. "Princess." Luo Linyuan took Yu Han's shirt and put it on with a cold face. Yu Han was taller than him, and his shoulder line was wider than him. The clothes were a size bigger than him, and the sleeves were covered. On the back of the hand. His face was strangely hot, but he still said sternly, "Who asked you to call me that?" He was referring to the little princess. Yu Han put on his white short sleeves. "I overheard them say that to you." After speaking, he suddenly smiled unconsciously, it's really suitable. Lorraine Visionary put on his clothes, who asked you to wear it? Yuhan pulled the tight-fitting short sleeves on his body, just be reasonable, I can't go home naked. Luo Linyuan was quite dissatisfied with Yuhan's way of raising the child. He raised his elbow and tried to hit him, but someone grabbed his arm. Seeing that he was so disobedient, Yuhan grabbed his collar again dangerously, and pressed him against the wall. When he was about to stick, he stopped, you haven't answered yet. My question. Lorraine was threatened like this, so he could only give in, don't be impulsive, say something. Yuhan grabbed his face with the other hand, why did you mention Rinyu and answer my question, otherwise you will not only suffer. Luo Linyuan was almost covering half of his face with his hands. Yuhan was clearly threatening him, but he didn't squeeze too hard. He could even be distracted and smell him. The palm is surprisingly refreshing, with a hint of mint. Luo Yuan's voice was muffled, I'll tell you when you take me to your house for a bath. Yuhan's face became strange again, want to go home with me? Luo Linyuan grabbed the man's hand and pulled out, don't think about it, I just don't want to wear your clothes, I'm too dirty, you let me take a shower and then talk about it. Yuhan. 20 minutes later, Lorraine Yuan stood in front of Yuhan's house. This is an old-fashioned community with no elevator. Fortunately, the floor is not high. The house in front of you is very small and old, and the walls are a little yellow. But it looks clean, everything is in order, and there are a lot of flowers and plants painted on the wall warmly. The wooden sofa also has small cushions carefully woven, with gentle color matching, and many awards are tacky behind the old TV, and there is a photo frame on the TV. In the frame is a very beautiful and bright woman holding a child. The child's fleshy face still can't see the facial features, and he can't see that he can grow into Yuhan's current shape in the future. Yuhan looks a lot like his mother, so she looks good. Yuhan took out a piece of clothing, no new one, this one has been washed, do you wear it? Luo Linyuan put down the photo frame and didn't speak when he saw Yuhan quickly step forward and buckle the photo frame face down on the TV cabinet, don't rummage through my things. Lorraine was a little embarrassed. He pulled the clothes in Yuhan's hands and smelled them with his nose. There was only softener and the fragrance of the sun. Yuhan could not help but feel a little embarrassed when he heard his actions. Luo Linyuan noticed his expression and said politely, don't think too much, I'm a straight man. Yuhan, who said no? Lorraine Yuan was speechless, snorted, turned around and entered the bathroom. There is no bathtub in it, only a short nozzle. Visually, Yuhan's stature has long exceeded this nozzle. Imagine Yuhan, a tall man, squeezed into this bathroom to take a shower, with a little sadness in the funny. Since he is so tall, move the fixed position of the nozzle. Is there no money? Also, if he had money, Yuhan wouldn't have to take time off to work in that kind of bar, and he wouldn't even be able to take care of his own grandmother. Thinking about it, it's pretty pitiful. Lorraine Yuan took off his clothes, identified the bottles of shower gel and shampoo one by one, and opened them to smell them. The strange thing is that these smells are not the kind on Yuhan. Also, how can artificial fragrance have such a wild taste? He turned on the sprinkler while thinking about something, and then he was poured cold water all over his face. Yuhan felt a little helpless when he heard people's shouts. How can so many things be so frustrating? He walked to the bathroom door and knocked, what's wrong? I'm dead. Yuhan didn't look inside through the door. There was a mirror next to the door, and he could see a fleshy color from the corner of his eye. Put your clothes on, I'll go in and take a look. Yuhan brought his thick bath towel, and after Lorraine came out, handed it to him, wipe it first. Lorraine stared at the towel a little tangled, you've used it. Yuhan almost laughed angrily, but soon he noticed Lorraine's blue lips, is it so cold? Lorraine looked at him feebly, he was in poor health and could not catch the cold. He was raised by thousands of pets in his family, and even in summer, he would pay attention not to be greedy for the cold and not to be exposed to the wind. Yuhan looked at him carefully, and regardless of whether he wanted it or not, he unfolded the towel and wrapped it around him like a cloak. Put it on first, you even have my clothes on. Do you still mind the bath towel I used? Luo Linyuan was foolishly wrapped in a bath towel, and when he heard Yuhan's words, he felt that it was cold just now, but now it is a little hot, and blood rushed to his head. Actually, Yuhan was right, he was wearing all his clothes, and he was pretending to be a bath towel, but it was a bath towel. The ghost knows what Yuhan usually wraps in a bath towel. Thinking of this, Luo Linyuan took the bath towel off his body just like throwing germs, and subconsciously wanted to throw it on the ground, but held back. This is someone else's house after all, Yuhan is also kind, he can't do this. He folded the bath towel on the sofa and rubbed it hard with his cold arms. After a while, Yuhan came out of the bathroom. The hot water is ready, go in quickly. Lorraine hurried in without looking at him from a distance. The temperature of the hot water is very high, and it is very comfortable to flush. Although the bathroom environment is not very good, no matter what kind of environment the hot water is in, it is relaxing and comfortable. After finally taking a shower, Luo Linyuan realized that he didn't take a towel. Don't think about Yuhan's house, there must be no new ones, and he really didn't want to use Yuhan's. Lorraine Yuan, who has been acting recklessly, finally regretted his whim. Why did he have to come to Yuhan's house to take a bath? Isn't it bad in his own home? After washing, Uncle Wu will ask the kitchen staff to bring him a cup of sweet milk so that he can grow up. Lorraine originally planned to wait for it to dry naturally, but it was too cold, so he had no choice but to start wiping the water off his body with a paper towel. After getting dressed, Lorraine clicked to flush. Lorraine Yuan. Yuhan prepares ingredients for soup, does homework and washes, sleeps only 3 hours, and gets up at 5 o'clock. Before going to school, he goes to the hospital to take care of his grandmother. It was all arranged until he brought the trouble home today. Lorraine is almost half an hour away. Does it take so long for a boy to take a bath? Just thinking about this, the bathroom door was opened a little. Luo Linyuan's face was red, his eyes were dodging, what he wanted to say was stuck because of shame, and he couldn't say it. Yuhan sighed again, he couldn't count how much he sighed tonight. He washed his hands and wiped it on his apron. What's wrong? Lorraine Yuan gritted his teeth and poked his neck. The toilet is blocked. The expression is righteous, but the voice is quite small. Yuhan did not hear clearly. What? Lorraine Yuan blushed anxiously. The toilet is blocked. I didn't go to the toilet, I just threw paper in it and it blocked. Yuhan walked in, and Luo Linyuan stepped aside. This is the first time that Luo Linyuan has encountered such an embarrassing thing. It's okay to come to the house of someone I don't know very well to take a bath, and even block the toilet. Yuhan glanced at the toilet. How much did you throw in? Lorraine was far from confident and said, 5 or 6. Yuhan, for what? Lorraine Yuan, there is water on my body after taking a shower. Yuhan lost his temper completely, he rubbed his temples. Forget it, let's go. Lorraine was not happy when he saw him like this. Didn't you force me to come? Yuhan, I forced you to come. Luo Linyuan is righteous, I was going to leave. You took me and asked Ren Yu about it and didn't let me go. Yuhan closed the bathroom door. Why on earth did you mention Renyu? This time Lorraine was far from hesitating. I saw you kissing him on the rooftop. Yuhan's face turned blue a little, and his eyes became stern. Did you tell someone else? Lorraine Yuan was caught in such a big pot that he was almost out of breath. I don't. What's there to say? It's not a big deal. It was the first time Yuhan looked at Lorraine Yuan so seriously, as if he was thinking about the authenticity of his words. Lorraine's anger also came up. Do you believe it or not? I didn't say it or didn't say it. He wanted to leave with a flick of his hand, but he was not familiar with this place at all, and as soon as he turned around, he kicked his foot on the rice jar. The rice jar was brought by Yu Han's grandmother from the countryside. It was strong and heavy. Lorraine Yuan's kick made him bent down in pain. Yu Han watched Lorraine Yuan come out one after another, and felt helpless and felt that he couldn't care less. He stretched out his hand to support the man's waist, trying to make him stand firm, but as soon as he put his hand on it, Lorraine stood up abruptly, and the back of his head almost hit his nose. Lorraine turned his head and complained first, "What are you doing? Yu Han, don't you hurt, I'll help you out." "Luo Lin Yuan, if you help me, what are you doing by touching my waist?" Yu Han listened to this and thought about the taste. He was off. These straight men always felt that as long as others were crooked, they could look at them. Yu Han hugged his hand and didn't plan to help. "I think you made a mistake." Lorraine endured the pain in his foot. "What? Yu Han, even if I really like men, I won't like you." Lorraine Yuan stared blankly, his mouth opened and he didn't know how to refute. He was stunned, his mind was in chaos, and finally he squeezed out a sentence, "Who made you like it? It's funny." Yu Han stretched out his hand again, "I can help you now, little princess." Lorraine jumped out of the kitchen with one foot, "Don't call me that." He hopped onto the sofa and sat down to check his toes. He kicked his big toe, and the nail was red and swollen. Yu Han pulled out the potion and handed it to Luo Lin Yuan, "Knead it yourself." Lorraine didn't even look from a distance, "I won't." "Yu Han, do you still want me to help you?" "Lorraine Yuan, I was hurt at your house." Yu Han only felt his forehead twitch and almost wanted to throw Lorraine away from his house. But he really wasted too much time tonight, and Lorraine knew that. He pulled out a small chair from under the coffee table, sat in front of Luo Lin Yuan, grabbed Luo Lin Yuan's injured foot and placed it on his knee, poured the medicinal wine into his palm and rubbed it hot. He looked at Lorraine's feet far away, how to say? Delicate feet that don't look like a boy, you can see that they haven't traveled much at a glance. Just as precious. Yu Han looked away uncomfortably, raised his hand and pressed his foot. "Lorraine Yuan, ah! Calm down." His voice was reproachful, but a little soft, sounding like a spoiled child. This time there is no need for Yu Han to think about it, Luo Lin Yuan himself is about to strangle himself who just screamed. "What the hell?" Lorraine's face was red in the distance, and Yu Han was also made to feel weird by him, so he had to say, "Be patient." Luo Lin Yuan held back and let Yu Han press him. Who knew that after Luo Lin Yuan closed his mouth tightly, the humming voice was even more ambiguous. The sound was a bit like someone covering her mouth and humming unbearably, intermittently and endlessly. "Yu Han, let go, can you stop breathing?" Lorraine was so enraged that he pulled his foot back from the knee. "Who is panting?" "It's because your technique is too bad to rub. I want to go home." Yu Han didn't stop him when he saw that he was really angry, he still had a lot of things to do. He got up to wash his hands, leaving Lorraine far behind. Lorraine Yuan limped to his shoes, struggling to put on socks and sneakers. Yu Han came out of the kitchen and saw that he was going to put his feet in his shoes, so he kindly said, "You can walk in my slippers." After all, he kicked his toes. Lorraine ignored him for a long time, trying to flatten the heel of his pair of sneakers and wear them like slippers, but unfortunately the shoes were too hard. Yu Han took out his homework at the dining table, and when he saw it, he said coolly, "The dogs raised downstairs often excrete in the corridor. Are you sure you want to wear socks?" "Lorraine Yuan." The man can bend and stretch. He turned around and took out his wallet, took out 100 yuan and slapped it on the shoe cabinet, "When I bought your slippers." Yu Han was already immersed in his homework. Hearing his words, he looked up at the denomination of the money and said lazily, "Thank you for your patronage." Lorraine was far from angry with others, but angry with himself. He opened the door and walked out, but Yu Han chased after him and closed the door, ignoring him. Yu Han glanced at the open door, thinking about getting up and closing it after finishing this question. Just halfway through the solution, Lorraine, who walked away aggressively, returned, holding the door awkwardly, that. I don't remember the way, you show me. Luo Linyuan is embarrassed himself, but he really doesn't remember the way very much, and this community is too old, the downstairs is all dark, there is not even a street light, and I don't know if it is safe or not. Will someone suddenly jump out of the dark place? He wanted Yu Han to send him out. He thought Yu Han would agree, but Yu Han simply refused. I don't have time, open a map on your mobile phone and go out. Lorraine Yuan grinds his teeth, his phone battery is only 8%, and he still wants to use this electricity to get a taxi. The only 100 yuan left on his body just now fell to Yu Han, so he can't ask someone to come back now, what a shame. Seeing that the pestle was not moving at the door, Yu Han had no choice but to say, I want you to sit for a while, and then I will finish my homework. Lorraine Yuan felt that he should reply, what are you kidding, then go out and turn right to leave this ghost place. But he stayed behind, and he reluctantly walked to Yu Han. Yu Han pulled out the chair beside him without raising his head, sit. Luo Linyuan sat down and glanced at the table. The place where Yu Han did his homework was their dining table, and the textbooks and books were spread out on the table. Yu Han's writing speed was very fast, and Luo Linyuan took a peek at it, and the words were pretty good too. He sees hands from words, then faces from hands, face to Adam's apple to shoulders, shoulders to eyes. Wait for eyes? Luo Linyuan and Yu Han, who couldn't bear his gaze, stared at each other. Lorraine Yuan took the lead, what are you looking at? Yu Han. Who is watching who? Yu Han turned a page, are you bored? Lorraine averted his eyes from a distance, it's super boring, there's nothing to play in your house. Yu Han wrote the paper and replied, you can play with your phone. Lorraine Yuan, my phone is out of power. Yu Han pushed the Chinese book over, then review, don't look at me. Lorraine Yuan, who sees you? Yu Han, do you know what you look like now? Luo Linyuan didn't dare to meet the master's eyes again, the eyes were too deep, as if he could fall into it accidentally. Hearing this, he subconsciously asked, like what? Yu Han paused for a moment, looked at Lorraine Yuan thoughtfully, and saw that he was ignorant, but he still swallowed the sentence that seemed to attract the attention of his sweetheart. Some words should not be said nonsense, so as not to have this thought. Yu Han didn't want to make trouble for himself, he casually said, it's nothing, don't disturb me if you want to go home early. Then Lorraine Yuan really quieted down, opened the language book, and saw it. Lorraine doesn't pay much attention to study. Anyway, no matter how great he reads, he will go home to inherit the family business. He has no problem with this arrangement, because he has nothing to do. And Lorraine likes to read very much. During the long time in the hospital when he was a child, he read book after book. Yu Han felt the silence around him, so he couldn't help turning his head to look. He saw Lorraine Yuan drooping his eyelashes carefully reading the book, the quiet Lorraine Yuan looked cold and melancholy. This is a bit like the rumored Lorraine. Yu Han didn't know why Luo Linyuan entangled himself like this, maybe it was a whim or other reasons. It's better to stop here, he doesn't want to have more entanglements with this person. They are not one kind of people, let alone one world. When Yu Han did his homework, Lorraine was sleepy, and he rubbed his eyes. Yu Han got up and put a coat on himself and walked to his side, let's go. Lorraine Yuan raised his hand naturally, pull me. His feet still hurt. Yu Han reached out and held him, pulling him up. Lorraine Yuan was helped, and he even said, your palm is too thick. Yu Han, oh, I'm really sorry. Lorraine didn't hear it as an irony, and waved his hand, remember to put on some hand cream next time. Yu Lengjing said, there is no next time. Lorraine hummed inexplicably, but did not understand. He was so sleepy that not only his nasal voice came out, but he also yawned several times. Now his eyelids were pink, his eyes were not sober, and he was a little dazed. Yuhan was afraid that he would not understand, so he said very bluntly, "I hope you don't act like you know me when you go back to school. Just like before, we are just unfamiliar classmates. I don't know you, and you don't know me, okay?" Luo Linyuan was completely awake, his eyes widened, and he looked at Yuhan in disbelief. Yuhan avoided his sight. "Let's go, I'll take you out." Since Yuhan said those words, Luo Linyuan has been silent. When Yuhan arrived in the corridor, he found that the sensor light was off, and the corridor was very dark. He took out his mobile phone and turned on the light bulb. Under the bright light, he saw the neighbor next door put the garbage bag at the door. Yuhan thought of the serious cleanliness man behind him. He turned around and wanted to remind Lorraine Yuan. "How do you know that?" Luo Linyuan is distracted as if he hadn't heard it, and even walked past him. Seeing that he was about to step on the dirty water, Yuhan had no choice but to reach out and grab it, hold the person's hand and gently pull it back. Luo Linyuan shook his hand away. "Didn't you say you don't know each other?" Yuhan said with a smile, "If I didn't mention this door, I had to know it." Lorraine Yuan retorted, "When will you decide whether I should know you or not?" Yuhan looked at Lorraine Yuan's unusually bright eyes in the dimness, and now there were a pair of torches burning in these beautiful eyes. He backed down first. "Well, if it's what I said just now that made you uncomfortable." Lorraine interrupted him rudely, "It's very uncomfortable." Yuhan nodded. He pointed to the ground, then shook the lamp, signaling people not to step on it. Lorraine saw it from afar. "Why, are you afraid that if I accidentally step on it, I will stay at your house and take a shower?" Yuhan. Lorraine Yuan took out his mobile phone and lit it up by himself, and went straight away. "It's just that his legs and feet are not very convenient, and he wobbles when he walks, looking a bit like a puffy penguin." Yuhan wanted to laugh, but it was obviously inappropriate to laugh at this time. He really didn't want to anger Lorraine anymore. Lorraine Yuan could not walk steadily, but he refused to hold the handrail of the stairs. Yuhan could probably guess that it was dirty. He stepped forward quickly and stretched out his arm. "Hold me." Lorraine glanced at him from a distance and didn't say a word, but the look in his eyes was obvious. He disliked him as much as he disliked the armrest. Yuhan was about to laugh angrily. This man was wearing his clothes and his slippers and took a bath at his house, and he even despised him. What's the matter? Isn't he just too busy to take a bath today? Besides, it took up his bathroom for half an hour, and it was the little Princess Luo who washed off his hot water. Yuhan touched his nose and followed helplessly, his eyes fixed on Lorraine Yuan, for fear that this man would make himself roll down the stairs. Fortunately, there were no surprises along the way. When Luo Linyuan got into the taxi with his hands in his arms, Yuhan shook his hand. "Goodbye." Luo Linyuan didn't even give him a look. Yuhan put down his hand with a wry smile, and felt that his decision just now was very wise, and he really is not suitable to have any entanglement with Luo Linyuan. After sending the Buddha away, he breathed a sigh of relief and prepared to go home. As a result, the taxi that drove out backed up, and Luo Linyuan lowered the window and handed out his mobile phone, which was a WeChat QR code. "Add me." Yuhan, "What?" Lorraine Yuan, "Add me, I'll transfer money to you." Yuhan grimaced, "No, you don't owe me anything." Luo Linyuan's face was even worse than him. "I will promise you if you add me, I don't want to show the appearance of knowing you at school." Yuhan closed his eyes. Finally he could only take the phone and scan it before handing it back. "Okay." Lorraine Far, pass. Yuhan felt a little funny. What happened to this person? He had to stare at him to pass the verification of his friends. Luo Linyuan saw Yuhan's avatar appearing in the ranks of his friends on his mobile phone. He put away his mobile phone with satisfaction, and made a mocking face towards the window. "To be honest, you really made me super excited just now. It's unpleasant, but as a person, the more unwilling people are, the more I am willing to do. and if you are unhappy, I will be happy. After saying this childish declaration, Lorraine turned to the driver and said, Master, let's go. The car drove away, Lorraine staring at the rear-view mirror. Yuhan shrank smaller and smaller, the whole tense back loosened. He felt that he was embarrassing. Yuhan said that, and he forcibly added people's WeChat. God knows how much he hurt his self-esteem when he heard Yuhan say that. Lorraine Yuan didn't have many friends because he didn't go to school often when he was a child. But he always told himself that it was not that he had no friends, but that he was too lazy to be friends with others. As I grew up, I had some friends. For example, Fang Xiao, Li Yujia, and the others. Although he has a bad temper, he still takes these friends to heart. The first time he wanted to be friends with someone was Yuhan. Yes, he wants to be friends with him, otherwise why does he care about Yuhan so much? Of course, to be friends with him. Although at the beginning it was just because this person kissed a man, so there was a little curiosity and a bad attitude that should not be there. It was only later that he found out that he played the piano well, wrote well, and looked good, so he wanted to get close to people. In the end, Yuhan actually despised him. What else did he say? I had better pretend not to know you at school. It's so funny, who wants to pester him at school? The driver held the steering wheel and turned off the radio. The hostess of Midnight Radio, with a soft voice, said she had received a submission. There is a person named Xiao Fang, who has a crush recently. This is the first time she likes someone. Xiao Fang said that at first, he just thought his eyes were good-looking, but gradually he discovered that his hands are also good-looking, and his writing is also good-looking. When she came back to her senses, she couldn't help but secretly fell in love with this senior. While listening to the driver, he sighed with emotion that the current students are not studying hard, and then he heard the young man in the back row suddenly reacted and shouted, "Nonsense! What a love, this is a man friendship." The driver was startled. "What's the matter, young man, what happened?" Lorraine Yuan supported the front seat. "Master, change the channel." The driver had no choice but to click. This time it was a male voice, singing affectionately, "Long live friendship, if I love you were words, what will be more and what will be less, let others guess that we are innocent." Driver: Lorraine Yuan. Luo Lin Yuan: "Master, you should close it." Driver: "Can I smoke a cigarette to refresh myself?" Lorraine Yuan: "No." Driver: Luo, are you listening to me?" Xiaofu raised her hand and shook it in front of people. Luo Lin Yuan grabbed the girl's hand and pressed it down. "Didn't you tell me not to call me that?" His thumb rubbed unconsciously in Xiaofu's palm, very soft and not rough at all. Xiaofu shouted, itching, and withdrew her hand. "Lolo sounds nice, I'm going to call, I'm going to call." She put her hands in front of Lorraine Yuan. "Do you see any difference?" Lorraine glanced at him indifferently. "Change the color." Xiaofu withdrew her hand. "I know you straight men can't see it, I didn't do manicures at all." Lorraine Yuan: "Then what is the meaning of your question?" After the class bell rang, Xiaofu reluctantly left the classroom. Fang Xiao leaned over, nudged him with his elbow, and winked at him. "What happened after sending someone home last night?" "Like." Luo Lin Yuan took out the language book, and then read the content that he didn't read last night. "Not so good." Fang Xiao: "Wows, you didn't do anything." Lorraine was speechless. "That's her house, and her parents, what do you want me to do?" Fang Xiao touched his chin. "Yes, but you will have a chance soon. Next week, our team will make an appointment with the 10th class to play ball. After the game, we will go camping by the way." Fu. Lorraine Yuan: "How did the two things, play ball and camping, come together, and why are there 10 classes?" Fang Xiao: "Not yet the captain, he has developed a relationship with the captain of the 10th class, saying that they are sympathetic, but I think his main point is to chase the captain's sister, who is also from the 10th class. I'm embarrassed to find a chance to ask someone out, so pull us together." Luo Linyuan suddenly thought that Yu Han also seemed to be in the 10th basketball team, so he asked, "Who is there?" Fang Xiao saw that the little Princess Luo finally came out of the castle to care about these mortals. Adjective. Lorraine Yuan suddenly lost interest, he lay back on the table, "No. Fang Xiao, I can't help but go," Xiaofu said she was going. Lorraine glanced at him from afar, "She didn't tell me, did she tell you to go first?" Fang Xiao raised his hands to show his innocence, "I heard it from her little sister, she said to go, you must go." Luo Linyuan still shook his head, Fang Xiao was anxious, "Why are you like this, how can you throw your girlfriend aside?" Lorraine was far from annoying, so he covered his face with a book, "It's so troublesome to fall in love, I don't want to talk about it anymore." Fang Xiao. Why didn't he want to talk? He just said a few words, and almost said that a couple of young lovers were separated. Fang Xiao didn't dare to speak anymore, took out his mobile phone and operated it, and complained to the other two in the group about Princess Luo's various behaviors. Lorraine was lying on the table far away, burying his face in his left arm, staring at the phone. After he got home last night, he transferred another 300 yuan to Yu Han, marking the money for clothes and water. He doesn't know how much Yu Han's clothes cost, but it won't exceed 300. But since he transferred the money, Yu Han has not confirmed it. After a few hours, it will be automatically returned. What is this? From today onwards, do two people think they don't know this? Lorraine fell asleep while thinking about it. When he woke up again, it was already over for get out of class. He felt the restlessness of the crowd. Many people were whispering, most of them were girls. Lorraine was still in a daze, and keenly caught a few words, Yu Han. Lorraine suddenly woke up, and he looked at the door of the classroom. Sure enough, Yu Han was at the door. He was leaning out to look into the classroom, as if he was looking for someone. Luo Linyuan's heart beat faster, a little panic and a little excited. He wanted to say slap in the face, didn't Yu Han say he wanted to pretend he didn't know him? What are you going to do now? He couldn't help but want to laugh, but he still had to hold back, pretending to be indifferent. He also thought that if Yu Han called out to him, he would have to wait a few seconds before going over. It's a pity that Lorraine Yuan thought too much, it was useless. Yu Han had already found the person he was looking for, he called that person out, and he was looking for Fang Xiao. Lorraine Yuan. Fang Xiao had a conversation with Yu Han, nodding from time to time, and when he came back, he found Lorraine staring at him fiercely, "What is he doing with you?" Fang Xiao trembled under this gaze, "Tell me about camping." Lorraine Yuan was a little surprised, "He is going to? Isn't he very busy?" Fang Xiao, "Yeah, he will go too, because this time we are camping, he is responsible for purchasing the accommodation, as well as camping and barbecues. The captain of the 10th class will deduct a portion from the public expenses. Giving him a copy is equivalent to asking him to be a tour guide to take us to camping. Luo Linyuan, he is willing to do this. His classmates are playing, but he has to be responsible for so many things? Fang Xiao, why don't you do it if you have money? Didn't I tell you, he wants money like hell. Luo Linyuan suddenly felt a little sour in his heart, he glared at Fang Xiao, that's also because he is also responsible for the grandmother in the hospital, otherwise what do you want him to do? Fang Xiao touched his face a little aggrieved, but he didn't say anything, why stare at him? Luo Linyuan took out his phone and pressed it twice, I'm going to. Fang Xiao, didn't you just not go? Lorraine was far from ignoring him, he transferred another 3,000 to Yu Han on WeChat, and sent a message, are you not accepting it, then I will call you until you accept it. After posting, he stared at the screen closely, and it didn't take long for Yu Han to be typing. But instead of waiting for the conversation, he waited for the reminder that it was refunded, and then Yu Han sent a sentence, don't joke about money. Lorraine read the message from a distance for a long time, and suddenly smashed the phone into the drawer with a loud thud. His movement attracted the teacher on the podium to stare at him. Fang Xiao also followed him, and finally saw a grief-stricken Lorraine Yuan. Luo Linyuan pressed his head against the tabletop, and shook it sadly and angrily. It's annoying. It's annoying. Fang Xiao covered his mouth with his hand, glanced at the teacher surreptitiously, and whispered to him, "What's wrong?" Lorraine gave him a gloomy look. "I don't want to go again." "Fang Xiao, is your mother-in-law here, so tangled?" Luo Linyuan turned his head around, leaving the back of his head for Fang Xiao. "Oh, you don't understand." Fang Xiao. Saturday morning, Lorraine rarely stayed in bed, got up early in the morning and threw his clothes on the bed. According to Lorraine Yuan's instructions before going to bed last night, Uncle Wu knocked on the door at 7:30 with milk on time. As soon as he opened the door, he saw his young master sitting in the pile of clothes. Holding his face in his hands, he stared at the mirror in distress. Luo Linyuan saw Uncle Wu coming, and jumped up from the pile of clothes. "Uncle Wu, what do you think I wear when I go out?" Uncle Wu knew that Luo Linyuan was going to a group activity today. He was very pleased, knowing that the young master had no friends when he was a child. Uncle Wu looked distressed. After Luo Linyuan finished drinking the milk, Uncle Wu handed him a tissue and asked him to wipe the white beard around his mouth. "Young master looks good in anything." Uncle Wu took the empty cup and looked at Luo Linyuan, who turned back to the bed to choose clothes. "Young master is very happy today." Luo Linyuan coughed, put down his clothes, and touched his neck. "It's okay, generally happy." "Uncle Wu, you can hold a party at home and invite your classmates to come over." "Uncle Wu, I will definitely entertain them." Lorraine Yuan just lit up his eyes and looked at Uncle Wu, but in an instant it dimmed again. "With so many people at home, my mother will be unhappy." Uncle Wu wanted to say how it happened, but thinking of his wife's habit, he swallowed the words back in his mouth. Lorraine Yuan finally chose a set of jeans and a baseball jacket. He carried a bag and looked at his mother before going out. Lin Shu stayed in her studio as usual, with paint on her hands and a cigarette in her mouth. She was immersed in her own creation and could not extricate herself. Lorraine Yuan's sound of opening the door obviously affected him. Lin Shu turned his head and looked stern. "Who let you in?" Lorraine was too scared to move. He lowered his eyelashes. "Mom, I'm going out camping with my classmates today, and I won't go home at night." Lin Shu put out the cigarette in the ashtray. "Are you still a 3-year-old child? Come and tell me all this." Lorraine clenched the door handle tightly. He thought, "This is the first time I've spent the night outside. It's different from those days in the hospital where I can't come back." He vaguely remembered that Lin Shu didn't treat him like this when he was a child, until Lin Shu found out that this child who was born after death and suffering did not inherit any talent from him. And because Lin Shu lost his body when he gave birth to him, he couldn't regenerate another one with the same talent as himself. Lin Shu was extremely disappointed. Since then, Lin Su's attitude towards him has become increasingly cold. Although in Luo's house, his father, aunt, and aunt treat him very well, but he always wants to be close to Lin Shu, which is a child's instinct to want to be close to his mother. Luo Linyuan took a step forward carefully. "Mom, I will take a landscape photo and bring it back to you, you can use it as a material." Lin Shu laughed. She got down from her chair. She was wearing a white shirt, revealing a thin collarbone. Her eyebrows and eyes are delicate. Although she has a certain age, there are years on her face, but she still looks. It can be seen that she was a great beauty when she was young, and Lorraine was almost carved in the same mold as her. They are two people who are so similar, but they are not close at all. Lin Shu scrutinized his son. "Your photography skills are as bad as your painting talent. How do you make things into paintings?" Lorraine lowered his head in embarrassment. He tried to find another topic. "Does Mom want breakfast?" Lin Shu took out the cigarette from his pocket. "If you don't eat it, go out and close the door. You are affecting me." Lin Shu has very strict requirements on the painting environment. She doesn't care about anything else, at least she can't hear any movement in the studio. Lorraine made a small noise and closed the door. Uncle Wu stood behind him. Little master, the kitchen made your favorite noodles for you. Lorraine walked to the dining room on the first floor. When will Dad come back? Uncle Wu, Master is still talking about business in the United States, at least half a month. Lorraine was stunned. Is he not coming back to celebrate my birthday? Uncle Wu sighed. Master will definitely try to come back. Lorraine was far from speaking, burying his head in eating the noodles. He got into the car after eating, and the driver took him to the agreed basketball court. He didn't stop to play basketball, so he watched from the side. Xiaofu was already sitting in the stands, shaking her head and waving her hands to cheer her up. In addition to Xiaofu, there were other girls in the stands, a bustling group. It seems that apart from him, all the boys have already left to play basketball. Seeing him coming, Xiaofu waved at him happily and asked him to sit beside her. Luo Linyuan whispered in Xiaofu's ear, there are many people, don't do this. Xiaofu was unhappy. She pulled out her hand, sat up straight and stared at him. What do you mind? Lorraine Yuan, I just don't like it. Xiaofu stared at him suspiciously. Are you afraid of being seen by anyone? Lorraine wanted to say no, but felt that such a dialogue was quite meaningless. Then do whatever you want. However, his words ignited Xiaofu's anger. The thing that girls hate to hear the most is one sentence, whatever you want. Xiaofu got up and sat in the first row, leaving Lorraine far away in the third row, surrounded by a group of girls. Lorraine Yuan is a man of few words. He originally wanted to watch the game quietly, but he would be asked what shampoo he used and why his hair looked shiny and soft. After a while, I asked if it was a useful skincare product and why my skin was so delicate. After a while, I asked what brand of clothes they were wearing. They looked good, so I bought one for my boyfriend when I went back. Lorraine couldn't breathe in a group of girls, and finally got up as if fleeing, left a sentence to buy water and ran away. He bought a lot of water, 2 big bags, all kinds of flavors. When she brought it back and distributed it to the girls, Xiaofu got even more angry when she saw it. Lorraine completely forgot about coaxing his girlfriend. He carried water to the players who were on the break. The captain of the 10th class saw that he was carrying so much, and he was a little surprised. There are also in our class. Fang Xiao vigorously patted Luo Linyuan on the shoulder, and put his arms around the man's neck. You're welcome. Although he said so, Fang Xiao turned his head and stared at Lorraine afar. We usually don't see you delivering water when we play. Say it. Have you seen any girl from the 10th class? Lorraine rolled his eyes to him. Shut up, drink water. He looked up at how many bottles were left in the plastic bag, and looked up to see who had not taken them. At a glance, he saw Yu Han sitting on the side, and someone had already handed him a towel and water. And he showed a gentle smile that Lorraine had never seen before, and thanked those girls. Luo Linyuan sneered in his heart, sat beside the bag, took out every remaining bottle of water, twisted it open, and took a sip. Don't want it, he doesn't want to give it yet.